Residents of Sakani in the East Rand haven't had water for days now. According to a statement by the City of Ekurhuleni, some pump stations have been switched off due to low water pressure from Rand water supply. Our reporter, Tshegohaco Moagi, is in Sakani. Tshegohaco, good to speak to you and connect with you again. Just give us the latest on the ground.
Well, good morning once again, Hugo. So where we currently are, much more quieter than at the fire station. We saw this particular truck coming through this way, but we're actually not too far, Hugo, from the hospital, the Pulusong hospital here in Tsakane. We spoke to a nurse who actually works there, telling us that the situation there is quite dire, that they haven't had water for all this time as well. So about 5 days now that residents here have not had water. They are actually relying on these water tankers, and they are saying that, it is quite desperate for them at this point. We've seen some children turn back from school because there's no water at the schools that they're at. Speaking to residents as well, they have said to us that it is quite disappointing that they haven't had water for so long. They are saying that there hasn't been an explanation from the City of Ekurhuleni as to what their actual issue could be. We spoke to some of the elderly in this area, and they've said to us, that they haven't had water for about 5 days, since about Saturday or Sunday, when the pumps were actually closed off. They haven't had water since then. Some of them have to travel long distances to get either to the fire station or this particular area where we're at now, which is not far from the center, the civic center, the customer center here in Sakane. And they travel quite long distances to get to these areas, and they rely on these water tankers. The children that we've spoken to really urging for the City of Ekurhuleni to just open those taps once again so that they are able to go back to school. They go to school. We spoke to one learner from Tsakane Secondary School. They go to school, however, they get turned back mainly because there isn't any water for them at school. So, the issue, of course, of flushing the toilet, washing your hands, something that one of the residents also said, that during this COVID-19 time, we are urged to wash our hands, and some of them don't even have enough budget or money to actually afford a sanitizer, and we are urged then to wash our hands. But how do they do so when there's no water in their taps at home? So that is just some of the issues that we have found from the residents here. There are some school children that are also here in this area. They have been sent back home as well due to the water issue in the Sakani area. We do understand that the City of Ekurhuleni Mayor, together with the MMC for Water and Energy, will be having a briefing this afternoon as an update to the residents as to what has actually taken place here and when they can expect their water to be restored.
I suppose one of the most unfortunate things is that school children have only just returned to full-time schooling only a few days ago, and now for the last 5 days they're being turned away because there is no water in those schools.
Indeed, Hugo. And at the fire station that we're at, where the water is actually, where there's a bigger truck, at that particular fire station, we saw children, very young children who are supposed to be in primary school, and they are at home, assisting their parents to fetch water because they are being turned back from school. We do know that schools had reopened just last week for all learners to go back, and now, as you mentioned, they are now being turned back to go back home because there's just no water at the schools. And there's also the issue of hygiene. Besides them needing to go to the toilet, their hands need to be washed. And this is something that the government has consistently been saying to South Africans, that you need to consistently wash your hands with soap and water because of COVID-19. But how is that even done for residents of Tsakane when they haven't had water for about 5 days now? So those are just some of the questions that, of course, we will pose to the mayor and to MMC come this afternoon around the issue of when will this actually be restored, and what is then the plan should it not be restored soon. Some of the residents that we've spoken to really just saying to us that they are getting told that it will be restored every day. So every day at about 5 o'clock, they get told that the water will be restored, but that is then not the case. They wake up in the morning and they still do not have water. They now have to make means with the water that they have. The water that they have in the basin or in the sink when they wash the dishes, they have to keep that water there for the full day, and they have to then make other means to bath and be very creative in certain ways as to how they will actually keep their homes clean. Some residents telling us that their laundry just keeps piling up because even though they are able to get water from these water tankers, it is not enough to actually do a full bunch of laundry. So they are really hoping that their water will be restored soon so that they can just get back to the daily lives and the daily routines that they are so used to.
So I suppose we all must spare a thought, certainly for the elderly and those living with disabilities when it comes to getting to these sources of water.
Absolutely, Hugo. And I spoke to quite a few elderlies, and, you know, they're really just saying that it is quite disappointing that they have to walk so far to get to the water. Some of them are walking 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers, others even longer than that, just to get to a water tank that is actually giving them some water. There are, however, some neighbors that are being good Samaritans and assisting their neighbors with water. If they've got cars, they drive them to the particular fire station or areas such as these for them to actually be able to get water. But of course, the elderly at this point are the ones that really suffer the most, the elderly and the children not being able to go to school. Elderly have to find ways to actually take this water from one place to the other. And you can just imagine they move from home with empty buckets. Some of them are using wheelbarrows to actually get to the various places where these water tanks are placed. And the buckets are initially empty. I mean, when you leave home, the buckets are initially empty. They fill up these buckets, and now going back home is now the issue, because they either have to carry them. We saw a woman putting a bucket on her head to try get home as quickly as possible. We also saw most of them that are using the wheelbarrows, they put their buckets in the wheelbarrow and then they just push it that way. But, you know, they are saying that it takes them quite some time now to get back home, because it is heavy for the elderly and for those living with disabilities.
Tshegohaco Moagi is coming to us from Sakani in the East Rand, where that water situation remains untenable. And key to that is that children who went back to school only a week ago are unable to attend schooling at the moment, being sent away because there's no running water at those schools, and also a struggle for the elderly and those living with disabilities.